Hello guys, welcome back to Old Trafford, and today we want to talk about one of the most promising talents in world football. And who are we going to be talking about today? We want to talk about one of the key targets or top targets of Ruben Amorim, called Richard Rios. Who is actually Richard Rios? Richard Rios is the 25 years old Colombian midfielder that plays for the Brazilian Serie A side Palmeiras, and is actually one of the most sought out for midfielders in Europe currently. And actually by this time last year he was actually one of the targets for the midfield option for Manchester United, but actually that move did not materialize, and this summer again he's one of the top targets of Ruben Amorim, as actually recently reported. So guys, let's dive into this video and dive into all the characteristics of Richard Rios. And actually if you look at his position, he's actually primarily a defensive midfielder, but he can play in the central midfield position and the attacking midfield position. And also if you look at some of his key characteristics, he has a defensive action of 83%, which tells you that he's actually very good defensively, and he has a chance creation percentage of 59%, and he has an attempted shot percentage of 95%, which actually tells you that he's a good ball striker. So guys, let's dive into this video. So guys, let's talk about the characteristics of Richard Rios. Richard Rios is actually a player that actually likes to put his thoughts on top the football, actually to entice the opposition, and when the opposition chooses to press or come against him, he's going to actually beat them with his pace, because he's actually a player that finds it, he thrives in beating players in 1v1 situation, because he has a lot of pace and agility, he has a top acceleration and top speed, so actually he has the ability to move past multiple players. So he's this kind of player that puts his thoughts on the football and wait for the players to come, and then maybe he's going to race past them. And in situations whereby midfielders get stuck these days, he's actually a player that actually thrives in beating players in 1v1 situation. He's the kind of Rodri kind of player that actually likes to take responsibility on the pitch, to try to control the midfield, try to steady the midfield, try to move past players as much as he can. So another very wonderful characteristics of Richard Rios that I actually like is that he's a player that he's never found alone in the midfield. He's a midfielder that likes to be found in between 2 to 3 opposition players, and that's because he has the pace and the agility, the ball carrying ability to be able to move past multiple players. This is actually one of the characteristics of Richard Rios I like a lot. He can use various techniques and variability of his characteristics to move past players, because he actually has the strength, the pace and the agility to move past multiple players. He's never found alone, he's actually found in between 2 or 3 players, and this is the kind of characteristics that Ruben Amorim wants, because when Manchester United wants to build up, actually a midfielder and a defender is going to form a pivot, and when a midfielder and a defender forms a pivot, they are going to be surrounded by a lot of attacking players that are going to be pressing to try to make Manchester United to lose possession as much as possible. If you have a player like Richard Rios that's actually a very good ball carrier that can be able to use his physical body very well, then he can be able to spin the player and be able to move past multiple players. So this is actually one of the characteristics of Richard Rios that is actually very wonderful. But one of the disadvantages of this characteristics is that he relies more on his ball carrying ability instead of giving the simple passes. And in Premier League, if you're really not a simple player, you're going to really struggle, because Premier League, actually, if you're a midfielder in Premier League, you have to be a very simple midfielder, a midfielder that actually relies on playing the simple passes and making life easy instead of being overly complicated. So I think Richard Rios is going to find it very difficult in Premier League if he wants to rely on ball carrying, because they are also athletic and agile player in the Premier League that can be able to match his ball carrying ability. So if he relies too much on this part of his football, then he's actually going to find it a lot more hectic in the Premier League. And he's also not a deep line playmaker, because he relies more on ball carrying ability. He's not a deep line playmaker that can be able to spread the play more often or play a lot of diagonal passes. He's a player that actually relies more on ball carrying, and he can be able to also steady the ship. I did not say that he doesn't know how to switch the play, but this is something that he doesn't really do much often in his game. So one of the very final characteristics of Richard Rios we are going to be talking about is his ability to tackle very well. You all know that in the Ruben Amorim formation, most of the times in terms of transition, or when Manchester United are trying to press, we press with basically the front shape and both the midfield. And you know that when this press is being beaten, Manchester United will be forced, and the midfielders will be forced to cover a lot of loopholes and a lot of spaces. Richard Rios is a player that actually have a very long leg, so he has this ability to actually go into tackles. And one of the most important characteristics of his tackling is that whenever he tackles, he doesn't go to the ground. And whenever a midfielder actually tackles and doesn't go to the ground, that gives the midfielder the leverage to be able to join into fast transition, to be able to transition very quickly when Manchester United want to go on a fast counter. So this is one of the characteristics of Richard Rios I like very well, because he can be able to actually tackle, he can be able to make a lot of good tackling even when he's being caught out of position. He's a player that even when he's caught out of position, he has a very remarkable recovery pace. He can be able to recover large distances and also win the ball and then make life easy for his teammates and for the team as a whole. So that's one of the characteristics of Richard Rios that I actually very appreciate. And Manchester United are going to need this kind of midfielder that has a very good recovery pace, that can be able to cover a lot of grounds, a lot of places, because if you look at the current midfield of Manchester United, we find it very hard to be able to cover a lot of spaces. And with Bruno playing in the pivot definitely next season, we need a more defensively and athletic midfielder that can be able to cover a lot of spaces for Bruno, because definitely you will not expect Bruno to do all the defensive work. And Richard Rios is actually a very big player. He's like 5'11", so he can be able to use his body properly. He can use his lower body and his upper body to actually mark very well. So Richard Rios is actually one of the best, probably one of the best market opportunities that Manchester United can be able to buy. Probably you know that whenever a player is being bought from the Brazilian league, probably this player should be like 19-20 years, like the raw players that actually has potential. But in the case of Richard Rios, he's actually 25 years old. He's like a first team in Palmeiras. He has played in the Club World Cup recently going on. He was probably the man of the match against Botafogo in their last triumph in the Club World Cup. He gave an assist. He was probably the man of the match with an 8.3 rating. That actually tells you that he's an experienced player and that he can be able to play in the Premier League without any form of worry about his experience or about his maturity level. So this is what we have for Richard Rios video. And if you want me to make any other video concerning any player Manchester United is linked to, I want you guys to give me your comments down below. I'd like you guys to like, to share, to subscribe for this video, because you're going to be seeing more videos like this. See you guys in my next video. Ciao.